Hello Master, and welcome back to the last video we're going to do on purpose. And in this video, again, we're just going to be talking about what does a life of purpose really look like and really feel like. So again, purpose cannot be found in capitalism. It cannot be bought and it cannot be sold. Your purpose is not a thing you do for money. Your purpose is not what you consume. And your purpose is not how you look or how it looks to other people. These things will be a part of our lives. These things will be a part of what we do, but they're not everything. At the same time, those things that you do that light you up, that make you feel connected to God, that make you feel like you're doing the thing you're here to do, are not your purpose. Those things alone can never fulfill you. Those things alone are not a full life. And sometimes I think it's important that we recognize that if our lives outside of that thing we do that we really love don't feel good, it's really easy to get caught in a cycle where we get kind of like addicted to that thing that we do as a coping mechanism for escaping the rest of our lives. And in our culture, where productivity and doing the thing you're here to do are seen as perpetually valuable, we often don't recognize where we're using that thing that makes us high and that gives us that dopamine hit as a tool for coping with the life that we're living. And then, it's not to say that there's something wrong with that, because again, sometimes we can't change the circumstances we're in. We can't make it feel better. And if that's our worst coping mechanism, doing the thing we love doing, a lot of the time it's like, that's fine. We can keep doing that. But we also want to remember that if we get to a place where, again, that thing that we love and that thing that lights us up and that thing that we're really passionate about becomes a thing we're like obsessed with, and then it becomes the thing that when we don't feel good in our lives, we constantly blame it on not being able to do that thing enough. Where we find that when we have uncomfortable emotions or we have uncomfortable experiences and we have conversations we need to have and things we need to do, and rather than that, we do that thing we love doing, that's where we want to start to check ourselves and say, is it really that I'm just not doing this thing I love enough? Or is it that there are other things in my life that don't feel good and I'm coping by doing this thing that I love? And I'm telling myself that if I could just build my life more around this thing, this doing this thing that I love, that I would feel better. When in real reality, right, your relationship with your caregivers is still there. Your relationship with your partner is still there. Your health issue is still there. The conversations you need to be having, capitalism itself, it's all still there. And doing more of your passion, turning your passion into more of your job, isn't going to fix that. It can be a very slippery slope in our culture, where we're trained over and over and over again that it's like, turn your passion into your career, just do more of your passion, just do more of that thing that lights you up, just make sure that you add more of this thing to your life. And to the degree that you feel dissatisfied is the degree to which you don't have this thing enough. We have to be careful with that, right? And I'm speaking from personal experience, because like I say, like this, to me, feels like my purpose. I absolutely feel that dopamine hit when I work. And it can be used as a tool to avoid my life if I'm not being careful. Because that's the reality. This culture is always going to celebrate me working harder and doing more. And there's always more that I could be doing, and there's always more that I could be pursuing. And when I'm feeling dissatisfied in my life, it's very easy for me to project it onto this. But I can tell you that learning to connect with God in ways that were outside of this, learning that there are going to be things in my life that don't feel good and that I need to address instead of running away to work. Learning that there are going to be some things in my life that don't feel good, and doing more work is actually just going to drain me more than it's going to help me manage that, have been very important. So I really want to put that out there, that just because you have a thing that you love, just because you have a thing you're passionate about, doesn't mean it's supposed to be your job. And it doesn't mean that it's always a lack of that thing that is making you feel dissatisfied. We have to learn to be honest with ourselves of why we're really feeling what we're feeling and what we're really feeling and what's going on for us. Second thing, your entire humanity is your purpose. So if we bring it back to like the first video we were talking about, the hero's journey, what's being not talked about in the modern spirituality world and the find your purpose rhetoric and all this stuff is all the other parts of life beyond just finding that thing you do that helps the community survive. They're not talking about the spirituality, like the practices that are just for you, that help you connect to that thing that makes you feel connected to something greater than yourself. And you're not doing it for social media, and you're not doing it to be good, and you're not doing it to fit into a group. You're doing it for how it feels for you, your personal experience. We're not talking about that. We're not talking enough about the emotional side of life. Learning to regulate your emotions, learning to understand your emotions, learning to express your emotions healthfully, learning to process your emotions, and the whole emotional process of being alive that isn't just, how do I use my emotions to figure out what I'm supposed to do here? We're not talking about relationships enough. Like just our interpersonal connection and how hard that is. How hard it is for a lot of us to find connection, and how hard it is for a lot of us to be in connection, because we live in this ultra capitalist world that teaches us that relationships are transactional. That teaches us that the whole point of being in a relationship is, what do I do for you and what do you do for me? We're not taught to connect, like to actually connect, where it's not about what do you do for me and what do I do for you, but it's about who are you, and I just want to get to know you. And I want to know what you're thinking, and I want to know what you're feeling for the sake of knowing. And I want you to see me and see what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and what I'm going through, just for the sake of it. So we don't feel fulfilled in our relationships because we're just, the only model we're given is this transactional thing. Or it's a partnership thing, right? Like, what do you guys do together so that you're surviving or that you're procreating but that's all that it is. That's being robbed from us. Leisure time. Things we do just for enjoyment. Things we do to just relax. We're either, like, again, being given that way too much as like a coping mechanism, or it's like, if it's not productive, if we can't show anybody what we're doing, if it's not for anything, we can't have it. And so most of us are in one extreme or the other, where we're overdoing leisure things and it's not fulfilling us. It's not that these things actually feel good. It's not that these things are actually restful or nourishing in some way. They're numbing and they're distracting. Or we don't have enough of it. We don't have enough break. We don't have enough rest. We don't have enough, I'm just doing this for the sake of enjoying this. We're lacking so many elements of what it is to be alive, what it is to be a human, what it is to live a life of purpose. because our humanity is not being acknowledged in our systems of consumption and production. We're not being allowed, like I said, to pursue a passion for the sake of just pursuing a passion, of pursuing God just for our own sake, of pursuing relationships in a deep way, of pursuing self-knowledge for the sake of it, and of pursuing leisure and enjoyment. When we look at the blue zones, the places on this earth where people live the longest, they've done all these studies and they've said, it's the natural food, it's the sunlight, and the problem is that there are a few different blue zones. I think there's 5 or 6 of them on the planet where people regularly live into their hundreds. And there's very little in common with these places, especially, right? Like they tried to turn it into a diet, of course, and life, like activity and all this stuff. And the reason they couldn't really was because the diets of all these different places are so varied that they could not be more different from one another. There isn't a through line in like how they live their life necessarily that we can like monetize. Rather, what these places all actually have in common is that they are resource rich. So these people do not live in a constant state of fear and not enough. Because they live in a place, in a world, in a community, in an environment where they have enough. Second thing, they live in insular communities. They live in insular communities. Most of these blue zones are kind of like landlocked, and nobody really comes in and nobody comes out, which means everybody is seen as me. The community works together as the community, and they have to figure things out together. And they know that they have a community around them if anything goes wrong. Third thing, they work for the purpose of producing enough so that they can live the rest of their lives. These places are not focused on productivity at all costs. They see productivity in the true and balanced sense, which is that we do what we need to do to provide a good life for ourselves. And then we stop and we enjoy that life. They don't overproduce and they don't overconsume. They take care of their environment and they work just enough so that everyone has what they need and then no more. And then, like I say, they spend the rest of their time enjoying one another and enjoying themselves and learning and reading and studying and worshiping and making art and connecting with each other. That is the thing they all actually have in common. These people live long, healthy lives because they're fulfilling their humanity. They're not a part of a system that says you are only what you consume and what you produce. So if we start to take that as our model for what a productive human life is supposed to look like. Again, this doesn't mean that some of us aren't going to have a purpose and a drive to do something, to change the world, to push things forward. That's totally legit. And that's hard, and it means that sometimes we're going to be out of balance in working more than we usually would or doing more than someone else or whatever. But again, we have to have that in the context of not sacrificing our humanity for it. And then on the other side of the spectrum, lots of us, we are not going to have a thing that lights us up that we can turn into something that we monetize. A lot of finding our purpose is realizing that when we're working the grocery store till, we give ourselves, this is purposeful. This is meaningful. The system cannot take from me that what I'm doing with my day doesn't matter. And even if it's not what you want to be doing, right? Again, I totally understand that. Being in a job that you don't love, being in circumstances that don't fulfill you. You don't have to try to convince yourself that this is what you want to be doing. But it is very important that you value yourself and you value the work that you're doing, regardless of how society sees it. Even if you're working towards something better, even if you want something better, this still counts. This still matters. You are still worthy and valuable and have a purpose right here, right now, and you are fulfilling it. And then we start to ask ourselves these bigger questions, right? What do I actually value? If I'm living a life where I feel like I am good enough, I feel like I am fundamentally worthy, what do I actually want to pursue? What areas of my life are out of balance that I can take back for myself? Where can I start to emphasize what culture is telling me, don't worry about that? Because it matters to me. It's important to me. It's important to my humanity. Where do I not need to work more? Or do my passion more? Or find more of my passion? And it's more about my body needs some love. My relationship needs some attention. My emotions need some attention. I need to slow down so that I can process my history and my past. What season are you in? Right? Is this a work season? Is this a relationship season? Is this a season of darkness and heaviness and nothing's really growing? Because all of that is going to exist. When we can embrace that we're not ever going to be one thing or in one place forever. That life is seasons, life is cycles. This is how we start to find purpose. We need to take our humanity back. You are so much more than what you consume and what you produce. You are so much more than what lights you up. Your whole life has purpose. Every step you take has purpose. Every minute of every day is purposeful. And this work is about you giving yourself permission to feel that. You giving yourself permission to feel like your life is purposeful right here, right now. And I know that we can be scared that then that will mean I won't do what I need to do to change things. No, it won't. The more you already feel like you're living your purpose, the more clarity you will get on what you actually need to do and what actually matters to you in terms of things you want to grow into. Instead of just chasing all these different things and having no idea what you're doing, because you're not living by your values. We must feel purposeful first. And then whatever you're here to do, you're not going to miss it. That's how you're going to get clear on it. Because it's no longer to fulfill a void that you can't fill with that thing. So don't be afraid to give yourself permission to feel like you're living your purpose right here, right now. It will not mean you don't do and reach your potential. It's the opposite. It will give you what you need to be able to actually figure out what you want. It will give you clarity. And sometimes that clarity will be, I don't need to do more. This is enough. Okay? Embracing your humanity is the key. Embracing your humanity, you are valuable and worthy and on purpose right here, right now. So if that was true, what matters to you? What do you have access to? That is where we want to go. Okay? So that wraps up the section on purpose. We only have a few more sections left, and then we'll be done. So I'll see you soon.